right, everybody, welcome back. We are going to start part 2 of the animated lines tutorial. So we just finished up with the owl, the animated lines with our owl logo. And what I want you to do is go ahead and start a new composition within this project. We're going to call this, well, you can call it whatever you want. I'm going to call it plant. We want to do 1920 by 1080 for sizes of our canvas, frame rate of 24 frames, and then we'll go ahead and make this 8 seconds as well. Okay, so I do have my title safe area turned on, which is always a pretty good idea generally. Let's go ahead and add a new solid layer. So the color of this layer, I'm gonna make it kind of a lighter, maybe like a pale, I think I'm gonna make it like a pale yellow, somewhere in there. So something kind of light and bright, but it has a little color. And then we are gonna start off with a shape layer as well. So go ahead and go to Layer, New, and Shape Layer. All right. We wanna make sure that we have the shape. It creates a shape, not a mask here, selected up at the top. We will get to masks later on in the term. So what we're gonna do is we are gonna make a plant, like sort of it could be a plant or maybe like a tree kind of shape that grows over time. So what I want you to do is go ahead and grab your pen tool. We're going to draw the trunk of the tree or the stem of the plant for this part. And I'm gonna kind of do it over here on the left side, because I would like to have some type come in on the right side. So I'm thinking that the stem or the trunk should be like about this tall maybe. So I'm gonna start here and I'm gonna sway over this way and make a curved line. And of course you can adjust this after, right? If you don't like how it's looking. And it has a lot of sway. It's got a lot of sway in it. Okay, so there's my initial line. I'm gonna come in here and grab my selection tool, and I'm gonna grab these anchors and give them some adjustments. So it's looking a little bit more like it's growing up towards the sun and not swaying in the wind. Bring this in a little bit. Okay, perfect. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're gonna make this stroke nice and thick, like the trunk or stem. I'll just say stem, I need to pick one. So for the stem of the plant, I'm gonna go ahead and make this nice and thick. I'm gonna choose a nice muted brown. So I'm gonna go ahead and navigate kind of the orange area. It's gonna give me my browns. And I'm gonna navigate down this way, and that's giving a nice contrast with that yellow in the background. I'm gonna hit OK. So that's looking good. I think it could be a little bit thicker. All right, so now what we're going to do is we're gonna take this path and we are going to taper it so that it has an organic shape. So underneath, you have the path and the stroke and the fill. We just have a stroke on it, no fill, right? Because it's just a path. So with the path selected here, toggle down, select the path, we are gonna add, well, actually, let me back up. I'm sorry. I thought this was something that needed to get added from this menu, but the taper choices are just underneath the stroke by default. Okay, so we have, like I said, we have our path, our stroke, and our fill. You want to toggle down the stroke. This is just an option that comes with it by default. So we're going to taper down, toggle down until we get to taper. And then if you start playing around with, let's see here. I can't remember exactly which control it is. Okay, there we go. So the end length, you can see I can adjust it here and have it taper. I actually don't want the bottom of it to be tapered. I want the start length to be tapered. Okay, there we go. So start width. Sometimes it's hard to remember all these little tiny details all the time. So sometimes you gotta kind of play around with them. So I'm going to put the start width at about right there. Now the other problem that we have is that this is what's known as a butt cap, which is just sort of a square end to whatever path you're working with. And we can change that right here. So you see line cap. We're going to change that from a butt cap to a round cap. And that's going to round both of those and give them more of an organic look. And I think actually I'd like to have that top taper just about all the way. It's looking a little too round up there. So I'm going to make that taper a little bit more extreme. And now I'm really getting the shape that I want. So now we are going to add something that we're all familiar with, that we've been working with to this path. And that is going to be the trim paths. So we're going to go to add, trim paths. We're going to toggle down, and we're going to have this grow over time. So I don't want it to start right away. I'm going to go about, I don't know, maybe a second or so in. And I'm not sure which way I want it to go. Yes, I want it to grow this way. So we're going to start it off at the start being 100%, which means that we don't see anything at all. So we're going to toggle on the start. I'm going to move this down the timeline just a little bit here, and let's go ahead and grow that over time. So now we have the stem growing out and appearing to the viewer over time, which is super cool. Now what we need to do is create the leaves. So I'm going to go ahead and draw the leaf first. So I'm going to start a new shape layer. So we're going to button that all up. I'm actually going to rename this to stem because I want to stay nice and organized. So I'm going to rename that to stem. Perfect. So let's do a new shape layer. And we're going to go ahead and take the pen tool, and I'm just going to draw a pretty straight short line wherever. And that'll work. I'm going to change that stroke to more of a green color for my leaves. So green, maybe more towards yellow, make this a little bit brighter, but a little bit muted. So maybe somewhere in there. Perfect. So I'm going to zoom in on this so y'all can see it really well. So I'm going to go down, and we're going to go into the shape. We're going to go into the stroke. We've got our taper options here. So the first thing I'm going to do is go ahead and make rounded caps on both ends, first of all. And then for the taper, I'm just going to play around with these controls until I'm getting the shape that I want. And so I like this shape here, but I think I'm going to take the stroke up a little bit, just make it a little bit more full. And I think I actually would like to make this leaf a little bit longer. These ease controls, you can use, you see how there's a little bit of a angle right here? So you can play around with these ease controls until you're getting the shape of the leaf that you really want. Okay, and that's looking pretty good. So I'm going to go to the path here, and we're going to add trim paths. And we're going to go ahead and just animate this leaf. It doesn't really matter too much where you animate it because we're going to move it afterwards, and we're going to duplicate layers so that you're not having to repeat this over and over again. Because I'll tell you, the one thing in animation, it's all about learning tricks to save yourself time. So let's go ahead and just start the leaf growing maybe somewhere like right around here after the stem gets done. So let's see, which way do I need to animate it? That would be it. Okay. So I'm going to start at 0%. And I'm going to have it grow over maybe this long. That can be adjusted later. Oh no, I'm doing this backwards. Happens a lot. Okay, let's try this again. So I want to start it at 100%. and then animate down to 0, which gives me that full leaf. Okay. So back up, you see that leaf comes in and grows. Now it's not perfect at the end. It kind of pops in with that rounded cap, but that's really okay. One of the things with motion design is that you need to, there's certain things that the viewer just, they're not going to notice because there's movement happening over time across the whole screen, okay? So like that coming in at that initial shape is not a big deal. It's not really going to be too noticeable. You could make some more adjustments and make it progressively grow more smoothly if your animation was moving really slowly, but ours isn't. So that's something, you know, those are the types of things that you have to think about in motion design and animation, is like, how long do you spend making a certain thing perfect when, you know, nobody's going to notice anyways. So you have to kind of think about that. So what I'm going to do is I only really want to see where the keyframes are on this shape layer. I don't need to see all this other stuff. It's taking up a lot of space. So we're going to hit the U key so that all it's being revealed to me are the keyframes associated with this particular layer. So if I look at the timing of everything, the tree comes up and the leaf grows, and that looks all good. So we're going to go ahead and move the leaf now. So I'm going to get my, selection tool. I'm going to go ahead and lock down the bottom layer. And then I am going to go ahead and move, let's see here. Okay, so this is a little bit tricky, but you need to grab the leaf layer. All of these anchor points need to be sort of highlighted. So if you have a situation where you just have one of them highlighted and it's trying to allow you to move them, I guess if you have one of these in particular highlighted, you need to click off of the path and then back onto it until these three are highlighted. The other thing we need to do to this leaf really quick is move the anchor point so that it's rotating and moving from the base of the leaf itself. All right, so let's go ahead and grab the selection tool. Whoops. I did not mean to do that. So this can be a little finicky. We're gonna go ahead and move the leaf, and I'm gonna kind of start it at the bottom here. And then I'm gonna go ahead and hit rotate, and we're just gonna rotate it a little bit so that it places into a spot where the tree can grow from. All right, so we're just gonna, ooh, this is tricky. You can also always move your layers with the position here as well. So sometimes it might be a little easier just to do that. All right. So we've got our first leaf into place. Let's go ahead and check that animation. So it's actually timed quite nicely. As the stem moves by, we have the leaf appearing over time. So that's great. So what we're gonna do now is we are gonna duplicate this shape layer and we're going to populate this tree with leaves. So what I'm going to have you do is go ahead and hit Command D, and you'll see another shape layer pop up here. I'm going to go ahead and hit Position, and I'm going to go ahead and adjust the X and the Y by position here. So I might move this one over here, and then I can rotate it to kind of move it to the other side. I'm going to hit P again to move that position. And that's looking really nice. All right. Command D for duplicate. And I'm going to hit position here. And I'm going to move this one up a bit. So, like so. That's looking really good. Let's do two more. So duplicate, hit P for position. That really does seem to be the easiest way. Let me see. Yeah, it's just too finicky. It's too finicky. The good news is you can change the size of it pretty easily by doing that, but it just doesn't like to move. All right, so we'll bring this over here. I'm gonna rotate that around like so. Yeah, it's tricky. You gotta get it right on the path, basically. Here, let me scroll in a bit here. You gotta get it right on the path to adjust it this way, which can be done. I'm gonna go ahead and shrink this down a little bit so it's matching the others. Yeah, so I guess that's what it is. You really need to be zoomed in and you need to grab it by the path. Okay, so I'm gonna duplicate this last one and I'm gonna grab it by the path, kind of move it. So this is gonna be the top one. I do want this one to be a little bit smaller. Like so. Maybe make it a little thicker. So a little short and a little thicker. Like so. All right, I'm gonna grab that path and move it. And it really does kind of feel like it needs maybe two more smaller ones actually. So I'm gonna go ahead and duplicate that top one, grab it by the path, put a little rotation on there. Now, if you're doing this and you're having a really hard time, that's perfectly fine. You know, yours doesn't have to be perfect and look exactly like mine by any means. So if you only end up making like 3 leaves, that's okay. All right, so let's go ahead and duplicate that top one. And we're gonna rotate it back the other way and place that so that it's looking good. And this one actually looks better in size than this one. I think this one, I'm gonna take the width down a little bit up here. And then I think I'm gonna make some minor adjustments on these ones too. So I think this one could be a little bit thicker. Move it out a little bit more. Now, the big problem with these is that they're all growing at the same time. So they look a little bit cheesy like that. And in fact, I think this one, I would like to see that one rotated a bit more. Maybe rotate it a bit more, a bit smaller. And then let's go ahead and just move it into place a little bit better. All right, so what I want to do is I want to reveal all the keyframes for all these layers to myself so that I can move the animation and stagger it a little bit more so it looks a little bit more natural. So the bottom layers are the bottom leaves, so I know that. And what I want to happen is for the bottom leaves to grow first and the top leaves to grow last. So I'm going to select the bottom layer. I'm going to shift select to the top layer. I'm going to hit U. And then I'm going to come in and make some adjustments on all these keyframes. So I'm going to grab these ones. I'm going to move them forward a little bit. And I'm going to stagger them. I'm going to stagger them all like steps. Like so. So let's back out and see how this is looking. Also, this is a good time to save your project, just FYI, if you haven't saved it. Okay, so we have our growing stem over time, and then our leaves come into place. And what I want you to imagine too is there's this technique with the growing tree, but you could, like having these lines animate over time with the trim paths, There's so many different ways that you could use this to populate visual content in your composition. So, okay, so this is great. I would like to move this entire tree over, but you know, I've got a lot of layers here and things are kind of getting out of control. So I'm actually going to do something that's called a pre-composition so that I can button these all up and kind of group them into the same layer. So I'm going to choose the stem. Don't choose your bottom layer. Shift select to the top. And what I want you to do is control click or right click on these highlighted layers. And I want you to go towards the bottom of the menu and I want you to choose pre-compose. And you're going to get this dialog box that pops up. We're going to call this tree. And basically what this does is it kind of nests all these layers into another composition because I'm done with the tree. I like how the branches are growing, or plant or whatever. I keep going back and forth between plant and tree. Sorry. They're kind of the same thing in this particular animation. I'm going to call it this. So this is just going to move everything into a new composition within this project. So I'm going to hit OK. And what I like about this is I can just highlight the composition here and I can just move the whole thing over. So I'm going to move it over to the side a little bit more. And then let's see, let's go ahead and add some text here. So I'm going to call this tree farm. I'm going to highlight all that, bring that font size down. We still have the font from the owl. This is, let's go ahead and match this to the green from the tree. Hit OK. And I'm going to pick a new text for this, something that's a little more rounded, a little bit more friendly towards how our growing tree looks. So probably the sans serif that's a little rounded. Let's try this one. Oh, that looks good. That works really well with this tree. So tree farm. And I'm going to adjust the leading there. And we're just going to set this right next to the tree. Maybe about here. And that makes me think the tree needs to move over a little bit more, like here. And it actually needs to be a bit smaller, I think. So what I'm going to do, I can adjust this entire pre-composition like it's its own object. So I'm going to hit S for scale. I'm just going to bring it down a little bit. It's way too tall for the text there. And in fact, the text might even be a little small. Let's see. And so it's all about just tweaking adjustments for your composition and what is going to look best. So we're going to actually make this a little bigger. Going to adjust that spacing. And I think that looks pretty good. So what I would like to do is just quick find a animation that fits this really well. And I'm seeing here with my title safe that the farm, the M in farm is going over. So both of these need to be scooted over to the left a little bit. So I'm just going to select both of those until they're both reaching into this region in equal amounts. Okay, so I'm going to select tree farm and we're going to browse and bridge for some kind of animation. So it's going to take a moment for bridge to go ahead and launch. And let's see, we're in organic already. I'm in organic already, which is great because it's probably something in here is probably going to work pretty well. And so what I need to think about in terms of being a motion designer is what out of all of these are going to match that tree growing motion the best. Ooh, I think we found it. How about sprouts? Right? Because we have the tree growing and the sprouts are growing up. This is the one. So I'm going to double click that, and it's going to go ahead and apply that animation to the text. Oh, but look, I was here in my timeline when I did that. And so it's not going to be animating when I want it to. So I'm going to choose Tree Farm. I'm going to hit the U key, and it's going to reveal my keyframes to me, and I see that they're over here. So I'm going to move it maybe to here. Let's see how that works with the tree growing. Well, we need to back it up a little bit more. Let's back it up to the beginning. Let's see how that looks. So yeah, the letters kind of come in. And it actually does not give enough time for the text to even reveal itself. It's moving really slow. So I'm going to take these keyframes. I'm going to highlight them all. I'm going to hold down my Option key. I'm going to squeeze them in a little bit. See if we can't get that going a little bit faster. Okay, so what I'm doing here is I'm just kind of going through all of the presets on this, and I am just trying to figure out how I can speed up the animation for that text to fall into place a little bit more quickly. And sometimes it can be kind of tricky. I think I've got it moving a little bit faster here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to toggle this up. I'm going to go ahead and, just for the sake of wrapping this tutorial up, so I did make the animation go a little bit faster. I'm going to go ahead and extend this. Whoops, I made a new composition. I didn't mean to do that. Go ahead and just delete that composition that I created by accident. Okay, so what I want to do is in my plant composition, I'm going to go to Composition Settings. And I'm going to stretch this out. And this is a good thing to know how to do. So I'm going to stretch it out to 12 seconds. And if I come down here to my timeline adjustment slider, you can see that it's been stretched out to 12 seconds, but everything still ends at 8 seconds. All we need to do is highlight these layers, and then we can pull and drag. Oh, I guess it will not do them at the same time. The tree itself is actually only 8 seconds. And remember that we took these layers and we nested them inside of a new composition. So we'll fix that in just a minute. The pale yellow layer is locked, so it won't let me do anything to it. That's what's going on. So we're going to stretch that all the way down after I unlock it. Now, to get into this tree composition, all we have to do is click into it. So we've clicked into it. And so this is a little bit like nested dolls, okay? So we're in the tree composition, but this is nested inside of plant. And what we need to do is we need to make this tree composition 12 seconds as well. So we're going to go to Composition Settings. We're going to change it from 8 to 12. Hit OK. We're going to make our timeline small so that we can see the gap in space over here. And this is also just good to know if you ever need to make something longer or shorter. So I'm going to stretch the tree out to the end. Now, if we close out of tree, you're going to see that tree is still at 8 seconds, but I'm able to take it and drag it all the way to the end. So let's look at this. Wow, that Sprouts is really slow. Well, if I, in this particular example, had more time, I'd mess around with that until we made it a lot faster, but that could be a while. So for the sake of time, and it's not a necessary skill set right now, we'll go ahead and end. So now we've got it at 12 seconds. What I will probably do after I export this and bring it into Adobe Premiere, which we're going to do here shortly, I will speed that up in Adobe Premiere. So I'll show you how to do that. Okay, so this is a good time to go ahead and save your project. I would suggest just going on to the next video. I need to just stop here for the sake of taking a break for everybody. But what we're gonna do in the next video is we're gonna render out both of these animations that we did, the owl and the tree, and then we're gonna stitch those together in Adobe Premiere, and I'll show you how to adjust the speed of this particular rendering in there as well. So, all right, I will just see you in the next video. Thanks all.